Hello, my name is Sean Tater with Range and Livestock Insurance.com. Hey, we want to talk today about livestock risk protection, and we're going to talk about feeder cattle. We're going to talk about some strategies that help you be able to manage the risk in your livestock production. And so we want to talk about risk. Everybody has risk from the day you wake up in the morning till when you go out to raising our kids to all those kind of things. We have risks that affects us, and our ability to protect against those risks are our key thing. And everything that we do in a production standpoint is we're trying to manage risk to get to the best outcome that we can do. So I want to talk to you today about livestock risk protection insurance and just kind of talk about some of those things. But first of all, let's talk about what are the problems that affect us and change our risk. So we have things like market dynamics that come in and they take away a lot of things from us. So when we talk about market dynamics, that's the supply demand cycle that plays into things. We also have the geopolitical things. Now we've all learned and found out in the last several years what COVID can do to a guy, how that can take the fun out of the party, and then confidence in where we're going in the future, whether from a political confidence, a personal confidence, financial confidence, those different things that we look at across our operations. And this all comes back to the stories we tell ourselves of would have, could have, should have. Boy, if I would have bought that load of calves, or I'd have bought those yearlings, or I'd have calved at this time or that time. And we're constantly plagued with those things because our vision is 2020 in the past. But when we look towards the future, it's harder to know. So we oftentimes beat ourselves up with the stories of would have, could have, should have. And then this puts a stress on our body and mind. So when we look at things and the partner in your operation or family is beating themselves up because they should have made a decision to do this or that, it can be a real problem. And then relationships with your family. Your family is the most important thing. That's what you're going in and doing this thing. The business that you're running in operations, you're doing it for someone or some other place. And so that relationship with your family is a big challenge. And the market dynamics and the prices, are we going to be able to afford to do this, can be affecting us in a lot of different ways. Our banker relationships, they are tense these times of days and this time of year, because when the market is telling us to purchase more cattle or to go out and expand our operations, oftentimes it isn't financially in the best interest of us to be doing it. Especially if we look back in the northern tier and the western drought states, we've been buying a lot of hay and putting those into the cost and effects of what we've been doing. So when we look at those relationships, they're awfully challenging. And then buyer has no offer when the market signal tells us to sell. So this is a challenge that we all face. We've all called that buyer on the phone. And years ago, they used to call you on the phone and they'd sit and they'd talk about where things were going. That was a great place to garner knowledge, information, and all that stuff. But they've got to the place now where they don't want to offend you by the fact that they don't have a price or don't have what to go, or they know that if they tell you what they really could buy your calves for, you would not be happy. And so a lot of times they just got to the place where they're not going to even return your phone calls or vice versa. And then hedging. A lot of this starts coming out. We start talking about things. We start looking at this and we bring up the term hedging, puts, options, those kind of things. And people just stop thinking, right? Because they've all either experienced one time where they had a costly deal. It's very consuming and it can add to the stress that you're doing. So when we look at market dynamics, we look at things like supply chain manipulation. We all can go into the conspiracy theories and things that are going on and the realities and facts that we've seen the supply chain marketplace slow down. Because when we look at a packer or someone along those lines, their ability to control that speed of that change allows them to be able to drive the market demand that increases the value for their beef. And they don't want to give up on that stuff. So that's a big thing. When we think about different things that can come in, we talk about geopolitical. Last year, we're almost on the anniversary of Ukraine being attacked. I visited with several of the people that have been a part of my videos and watching. Last year, I said, hey, this Putin guy, he is serious about attacking Ukraine. And when that did, that has changed a lot of things. Billions and billions of dollars have been funneled into that country and changed what our market dynamics affect our tax implications going forward. A world disruption like that can be a big challenge. And so when we look at those things, that can be something. Weather anomalies. As many of us are facing the extreme droughts that have hit the West and really changed the cattle production cycle and affected people's ability to go through things. Weather dynamics can be outstandingly challenging. We've also faced bitter cold in the month of December this last year, and every year we face something that takes the joy and the fun out of what we're doing. And then we have COVID, the geopolitical thing from Ukraine again, but the COVID that has come in and changed the way that we can see a whole marketplace can be shut down, and we have zero control over that. The value of the US dollar. This is a key thing. As we look at some of the market highs and demands that have come into this world, I'm going to show you some different stuff that's going on. But when we look at that, our dollar is stronger than it has ever been. It doesn't feel stronger in our way, but when we think about that from an export deal, it's a lot cheaper to import products into our country than it is to go back out of it. And then the real estate value. When we look at how ag and production land has changed in value, we have a lot of people who have the idea and the thought is we're in Montana. We see the effects of the Yellowstone show and what that's brought to us, good and bad. But it's increased and open to people want a piece of this kind of lifestyle and land. And so they fantasize over the fact of where we are. It's a good thing for our industry to see those kind of things, but it's also very challenging for the real estate values. And then equipment values. My goodness, the stories that we have heard over this last little bit and visiting, people are talking about 20, 30, and 40% increases in equipment cost. As that starts to play into you, you hope that your production that you're doing will offset that cost. But what really we're finding is that it's not meeting that need. And then we look at hay, how many people have had to put into money for hay and different aspects of that. We look at family transitions. When we look at people changing the generation on to the next generation, we've seen a lot of challenges that come with that. Blessings and curses that all come about that. And that can be a stressful thing as we're looking at things. And then labor. Everybody wants to be Lloyd and Rip from there. And so we're not really seeing the labor force that we once seen. And that's a challenge that's coming into affecting a lot of our ranching operations. And then the mental stress of the risk. The stories again of would have, could have, should have. That is killing ranchers around us all day long. And I know that you're standing back and you're saying, gosh, well, it's really not that bad. But there are people that go into it. And we all face that in a fluctuation in time. Certain times of the year, it's way worse than others. But we put a lot of hope and risk, or a lot of hope on what our future will be. But the stories of, can I hit that market high? When should I sell? Should I sell now? Should I sell then? What if it doesn't come through? And that puts a stress on our bodies and minds. We're seeing a lot of effects that are affecting people, from mental health and different things that are affecting people. And I know people don't like to talk about that kind of stuff and don't like to have that conversation, but just having this kind of a conversation and looking at this and saying, man, some of the things that are hitting me, this is affecting way more than I thought. And I'm tired just because this is a thinking man's game, and it's been challenging. I could do the labor, I could do the hard work, but when we get into starting to manage risk and do all these things, I just got another fence post to put in. I've got cows to feed. I don't want to think about that. And then family relationships. I can't stress the challenges that are affecting so many of our people today, but the family relations play a big part in that. And then we look at our professional relationships. We look at our bankers and trust relationships. A lot of the type of things that we look at when we're going into our bankers, too many of us come in and say, will you allow me to be able to farm a ranch one more year? And we're putting a lot of stress on that banker to come up with that. And when we put that power into their hands and we don't have a plan, that doesn't build much confidence in them that they're going to be like, man, that's the guy I want to partner with. So when we look at that, we may be thinking that there's a real pull and a push in this type of situation, but sometimes the hard discussions that they're having are difficult ones to have because we have an unmanaged risk out there that is really floating in the wind of what we're going to get. The buyer versus auction yard choices. This is a relationship that we've got to find the people that are going to help us do that. And that might be through a country buyer. It may be through a video sale. It may be through the local auction yard. But the relationships with them are stressed a lot of times because we want them to be able to garner more opportunity for us. But they may not have the buyers on the other end that are doing that. And those guys really play into that. And that goes into that supply demand. And then we look at our veterinarians and our trusted advisors that come in and share with us, and we all have a different opinion or idea that goes out in that, and being able to muddle through that. And then the blame of when that price doesn't go well in one area or the other. I have certain customers that deal with corporations that come in and tell them what they have to do. I have family ranches that dad didn't do it this way, or my wife didn't agree with this. So those kind of things, we want to shift that blame onto someone else. But here's the tough part: it just kind of falls back on us. And then the hedging fear that comes into this. When we look at hedging, it has been something that has been told that is a great risk management tool, but it really requires a lot of market knowledge and a lot of time in it. And so when you find the type of people that can help you, and man, if you've ever had to make margin calls or go down that path, that can be a very stressful situation. So let's look at the possibilities. So if we look at things like livestock risk protection, we can protect against the unknown outside forces like the social issues, COVID, news, the things that are going on, people who are anti-meat, the health scares and effects that have went into things. And then the constant news cycle. There, we get news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what we're getting is a lot of times they don't have much to talk about, but it really affects these markets and changes these markets. And that's what we'll kind of show you. And then we need to find out a possibility to put a price on our calves to be able to floor that, so that if it goes below that price, I have some sort of a safety net to help me be able to continue on, and some confidence that I know that I'm not standing out here waiting in the wind for where that price comes along. I can kind of pick some of that and kind of protect myself against some of those. You can wake up in the morning with confidence that you know that what you could do. We all wake up every morning after we sold our calves and said, I'm not going to look at the market because the price that I got is the price that I got. And I'm either happy or sad with it, but I've got that price and I got to move on or beat myself up. Well, this is an opportunity for you to be able to control some of that. And then when your boss isn't happy, the wife or the owner, you're not happy. I think we have a huge situation going on with a lot of our farming and ranching operations that a lot of the ranchers are sleeping with the bookkeepers. And I know that that's kind of a joke and kind of going, but that's a fact. When you think about that, your partner that might be your spouse is the one that you have to deal with this, and the financial decisions that we make or choose to make with or without them affects our relationship at home, and that can be a big challenge. And the banker's not your marketer, but they can show you, but you can show them that you have a plan, that you have something in protection in place. And then if your buyer won't return your call because they have nothing, they're not being jerks or ignorant people. They frankly do not have a price. And so you can take some of that uncertainty out of it. When you know you want to take advantage of those high prices, and that you can grab that price out there and hold on to that and know that you're protected, that if that price goes down, you've got some tools in there. And you're going to be using a simple subsidized risk management tool that has a great basis and backing. So livestock risk protection, what is it? Simply, LRP is a tool to protect against the downside risk on the CME Feeder Board. So basically what this is telling us is what the feeder board price is. When we get to these higher prices, like we're looking at today, we can protect against that downside risk. LRP is essentially a put option. And I brought up this word option, right? Part of hedging and all that kind of stuff. This is a put option has oftentimes been described in history as an insurance policy against a price drop in the market. So don't glaze over and move on and say, gosh, I don't want to hear anymore. Let me show you how simple this tool can be. LRP locks in a future price on the CME Feeder Board or the Fed board only. So all this is doing is locking in a price separate of what you deal with the cattle you sell, your physical trade that you do. This is just locking in a price on the CME Feeder Board. In LRP, you use your anticipated ship date, estimated weight for the steers or heifers or unborn steers and heifers to establish what that value is. Your premium is generated according to the CME expected value in a per hundredweight. So the CME puts out a futures price. We see that every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They tell us what they expect that value at, and we can pick within 99 point some percent of that price is what we can do. So if you know much about put options, it's at the money put option. So we can say, okay, we have a price that is floating around today, like 209 or 212. We can lock in that price today at 212, 99% of that price. And so that's what the tool we have. So, and this deal is a per hundredweight premium, and it's subsidized by the risk management agency. So when we think about things, we have a 6-weight calf that would be 600 weights, and so we'll look at kind of some things like that. And as you watch through my emails, you'll be able to tell kind of how this goes. And we can be up to 35, 45%. There are some tools that are out at 55%, but I haven't seen them work quite the way that I'd like them. An LRP subsidized premium is due the month after the ending date. So this is a key thing. You do not pay for this until after you potentially have shipped those calves. And so we'll get into discussing that. We have a few different options, but you do not have to pay for that up front. Versus if you were to buy a traditional put option, you would pay for that month. How is it settled? So how do we come to the ending price? How do we come to find out where things are going? And this is where you really need to turn your ears on, because we've had some cross ideas that have come into this, but this is exactly how it's done. So we settle this price on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Feeder Cattle Commodity Index price. So we have a futures price. Futures price is what it is in the futures. The CME Feeder Cattle Commodity Index price is exactly what is that price, what we term the cash price you hear on the radio, comes from the CME Commodity Index price. And so that is a 7-day moving average that is taken from sale barns across the region. So wherever the cattle are moving. And so it's typically larger strings of cattle that are moved either the north or the south or wherever the trade is really happening, they pull into that. So we're here in Montana. We will see some Montana prices play into that. Typically, it's going to be more of a southern trade or central United States trade, but that's where they come up with that price, and that is what we hear as the cash price that we go on. So that's going to kind of tell you where that is. It is published every day. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can find out what that price is for your settlement price. So the CME Cattle Feeder Index, Commodity Index, is basically referred to as the cash price. Keep that in mind. That's how we look at that, and you can find that every single day. So the day your LRP policy expires is the price that is used to determine if you are owed money or you owe premium. So nothing in life is free, right? So this does cost you money, no doubt, but it is a premium, just no different than your car insurance premium or your farm ranch insurance premium policy. This is what it does. And so when we go and we are anything below that premium price that we have put out there, if we're anywhere below that, you're going to start to get that premium taken away. And if it goes further than your premium, then you will get what is called an indemnity payment. So you're going to get paid that price that you have locked in for that said set of cattle on the CME futures price versus the cattle feeder index. And any difference below that, you're paid. If it's above that price, then you have received higher than what you've insured for, and things should be better. And so this is just protecting against the downside price. You have a full upside potential set in place for you. So here's how we look at things. We have the CME Cattle Feeders Index, and you'll see this is from 127 of 23. And we're going to see that we are up in that 209 range on a steer. So this is where it's been settling at. We're at these prices. We'll show you how great these prices are and what can go. This is the CME Cattle Feeder Commodity Index. So this is where the cash price has actually been every day, fluctuating out from October through December. And this is the October futures price. And we'll kind of explain. I pick a lot of times October and November because it's just about the same as selling grain off of a combine during harvest time in July for a northern trade. It's typically not the best price you'll get because we have all the supply we need. So we have typically seen historically the October to November cattle feeders price, the futures price has oftentimes been cheaper at that time, especially the commodity index. So we hear about a thing called basis. And so you're going to get a kind of an understanding. And I tried to, every time I put this out, I try to put this equation. What is basis? Basis is the cash price minus the futures price, or the CME Feeder Cattle Commodity Index minus the CME Feeder Cattle Futures Price. So when we look in this example, we are looking at a $30 per hundredweight value difference in this deal. Remember, this is 209 per hundredweight, right? It's not 209 per pound. You can figure things out that way, but the way they settle all this stuff is 209 per hundredweight. So if it's a 6-weight calf, it's 209 times 6. And so this is the difference between these two. It's 179 here that's being traded today, but in the future, it's telling us it's there. So the question you ask yourself, for this to settle out and to come to this cash price that we meet, the futures has to meet cash. So what the age-old question is, the cash price going to rise to the futures, or is the future price going to go down? One thing that's really interesting about the feeder cattle complex, and when they go through their price, is that it has been since way back in the 90s that the cash price has actually been higher than the futures price. Well, why is that? That's because we have a lot of funds and different things that are investing in the CME feeder cattle index, or in the CME futures price as a risk management tool that they use in their investment portfolio. That has been a good double-edged sword because they bring a lot more money into the marketplace, but they also can drive the market different than what a production deal would be. So typically in the northern states, when it comes October, we'll have our cash price technically be higher than that. But remember, this is a 7-day moving average from sale barns across the cattle areas of the United States. So the trade may have moved south, and that price may be lower. We typically hear in Montana that we beat the basis by $5. That means that this cash price, when we get our actual cash prices in Montana, they're sometimes up here in this 185, 187 price range. They beat that market. And so that's one of the things that we can look at. So hopefully that's not going to be too confusing, but we're just really wanting you to be able to understand that portion. So let's look at historically where we are and what we're doing. We talk about black flag events that have come in and have really affected us and did different things. So let's go back and let's talk about our most recent ones that we've came in and affected us. And here, when we look at 2002, when we see this price fluctuation that went right here, and I didn't write this in, and I wish I would have at this time, but this price, if you see my cursor, this would have been Ukraine. This is what happened when they said, oh my gosh, we're at war, or someone else is at war. We have a lot of unstableness. This is what that price dropped to. This is what COVID did. This is when COVID came in and hit us. We weren't sure where everything was going, and all of a sudden, boom, it dropped significantly. And so that price drop was somewhere that we could take as taken the fun and the excitement, because we were told by Cattle Facts and different things like that this price is increasing. We're going to have the best we've ever had, because everybody's dreaming about being right here, right? This is 14, 15 when we were getting unreal prices. A blind man could make a living. You couldn't fail, all those kind of things. But it was very short-lived, and it was very challenging. And boy, that risk that came in that was awfully challenging. That was difficult for most people to deal with. So we look at where that is. And so this is from the 27th again. And this is just looking back over the years. We all dream of this spot, but how do we get back to it? And how long does it take us to get there? When we look at the cattle cycles and where we're going, it seems to be about a 7-year cycle, and that we start to jump up. And so if you look at just general things, that's where we're going. Here we look at the crash of 2008. So when we had the crash of 2008, that would have came right when we were getting ready to market a lot of those feeder cattle. And here's this huge drop that came in. And they never really quite recovered. Now, corn and grain and some of those things that you've seen, we had that recover behind amazing stuff. One, because we were out of supply. The demand was high. We were trying all kinds of things to get back, but the feeder cattle just kind of hung out there for a while and didn't go. And so we see that hit. That's another example of the black flag that came in. Let me go back and talk about the Holcomb plant fire that happened in that area. We seen the Holcomb plant fire that came in and affected us in a way that was really challenging for really no reason. It didn't disrupt supply, but it ended up causing us to drop down here from a spot that we were at that we really couldn't make a big difference and change. So when we look at that, there's another example of that dropping off right in that key time when we needed it to hold there. And then the cow that killed Christmas, this is BSE, right? We haven't been in this brown line here, and this is something I think that we really need to take into consideration, that we had the cash price higher than the futures price, right? We were selling calves way more, and so the feeder cattle futures deal really didn't make a lot of sense to go in and to put those things in, but it did make sense to utilize a put option that maybe would help us, or a call. And so we get into those things, they get kind of confusing. But literally, when we look at this brown line of where cash has been and we start looking back, we haven't been in this situation for quite some time. And so I don't think we're going there again. Even here, we have the brown line. It's hard to see in this video, but we had the cash prices up in here, but really we see the index and those things falling very close to that line. And so we'll kind of show that some more. So what LRP is not, and this is really key thing. So it's not a guarantee on the real price you negotiate for your calves. And so I've had a lot of discussions on this, and this is where it stops a lot of people and they get confused and stuff. The price you negotiate for your calves, either taking them into the sale barn, going on the video sale, or selling in the country, that price has really nothing to do with this. You are just protecting against a price out in future time. This price you negotiate for your calves because of whatever programs or those kind of things that you are in, that's a real price. That's really negotiated cash out, ends and leaves his hand. This other deal is you found a price you liked and you're protecting it on the board. And so it has nothing to do with your real price. So when you ship your calves and all that kind of stuff, I don't need to know the price you got for your calves. I don't need to know any of that. Just I need to know that you shipped as many calves as you said you had protected, and then we're covered on that. And so what we're going to do is make sure you separate what you get for your calves is different than what we're protecting. And this is a big challenge for a lot of people to understand. But you get a price out there that you'd like. Now we're protecting that. So let's go in and kind of do things. And it's settled not on your buyer or the auction yard. It is settled on that CME cattle feeder index. It will not limit your upside potential. So if the market takes off like a rocket ship and goes, and we see the spike like we see clear back in here, you can take full advantage of that, full advantage. But if the price were to drop, then you're protected against this drop right here. So we'll go in and show a little bit more of that kind of stuff. So you will not have to pay for this up front. You pay for this at the end. And that is a key thing. Just the same as farmers pay for crop insurance, they don't pay for it till that crop is typically supposed to be in the bins and in that place. So that's a key thing to think about. So when you have the cash available and can pay for it because you shipped your calves, you sold them, you've got your real price for your calves, then if you have to pay your premium or any of that, that's then, or your payment, it'll get settled at that deal and no margin calls. You essentially, the premium that you're paying is essentially the only margin call that you'll be asked to pay. And you are not, this is going to kind of confuse you a little bit, but you're not required to actually ship the cattle on a feeder cattle contract. If it's a fed contract, they have an end date, they have a termination in their life. And so that goes away. But in this deal, say you have replacement heifers, for an example, and we want to protect that. And you are going to sell all your heifers, but the market is telling you that you should keep them and breed them. You can keep those cattle as long as we can prove that you still own those cattle. And so you can go on, you can get to collect the indemnity, all those things that come into that, but you do not have to ship your cattle. Another really big thing that's come in, that because of the droughts and the different things that are going on, that you can ship your cattle up to 60 days prior to the end date. And it has been extended further when we have extreme drought situations. So What that tells me is that I have the opportunity to pick that October, November timeframe when I know that the cash price drops lower, that I could maybe pick some of those dates because that price may be more advantageous to what people are looking at. So that's a key thing to look at. So when we talk about spreading our risk, well, let's get in and kind of go through the nitty gritty of what this is doing. We have a certain amount of weeks that we can pick, and I think it goes from 13 up to 52 weeks out that we can pick in certain week intervals. So this is a 39. If we looked at this and said, okay, October 30th looked like a price, and I kind of showed you some prices up there, that we can have an end date of either 34-week length or 39-week length. And so you have an end date, and it's on 9/25/2003. So that's the date that would be exactly the 34 weeks apart from that. And expected ending value was 208.50. I can go 99.75% of that price. So that I'm pretty much at the money. So my coverage price is 207.97. The cost per head without any subsidize is $55 per head. So it's costing me, when I put my subsidy into that, $36 per head to cover that. So that is a nice value and savings in that. And I'm guaranteed total per head $1,455.79. And this is for a 7-weight calf right here. You can kind of see the target weight is 7. So this is what I'm protected against. So now if this price drops anywhere below this, 207.97 goes down any below this, then I am guaranteed that I'm going to get some money back. So when we look at this $36 per head, and we kind of figure out, okay, $36 per head, how much is that per hundredweight? I take 36 and I divide that by 7. That gives me $5.14 per hundredweight, what that costed me. So I take that $5.14, 207 minus 5.14. The market has to drop to 201. If it drops to 201, then I'll get my full premium paid for. If it keeps going below, then they'll start paying me money back on a per hundredweight basis. So that kind of gets that. So we suggest that you pick closest to your anticipated ship date or closest to 60 days of your anticipated ship date. And you can pick 99% for 35% subsidy or 95% at a 45% subsidy. We can look at that. You pick the number of head that you want to protect. So when we look at that, you can do all of your head. I don't recommend doing 100% because we know we can have calves die or different things that come into that can affect that some way, one way or the other. And so we're going to go in and we're going to pick the amount of number we know that'll get on that truck into head. And then we recommend, what I figured out is that we recommend putting 25% of the herd at a time. And this is because we spread our risk. If you really take and look at that, we have this one payday a year model that we've been using in the cattle industry for years. So if you're a typical cow-calf producer, you pick one day out of the year, whether it's June or whenever that day is, that's the day that you negotiate the price for all of your cattle at one time. And we would all like to be able to haul our calves into the sale barn. The price is good one week and we sell part of them. And then the next week it's higher and I got more to sell and then just kind of sell up a high selling market. We'd all like to take advantage of that, but it's oftentimes hard to do, right? We can't wean the calves 25% at a time. And so what we're doing is we're giving you an opportunity to protect a price at 25% at a time. And what I found is that if I spread that out, I can take advantage of when that price went higher throughout the year, especially in a year like this where we know that the price could potentially go higher. I'm protecting that risk a little bit at a time every time. So let's look at a successful situation that we had. And I've got things kind of highlighted. You may want to pause and look at this thing again if I go through it too fast. But this was an actual customer that was from Sweetgrass County. And so we looked at this deal, and I've taken all their names out of it to look at it. But it's a feeder cattle contract. It's steers weight 1, and the steers protected at 475 per hundredweight. So that was a 475-pound calf that went in there. And so their effective date was 8/10, and this was a pretty short time, one of the shortest weeks, the 13-week deal. And end date was 11/9/19/21. They had 90 head, and they are 475. The coverage price was $1.8231, and their insured value was $77,000, and the producer premium ended up being $1,782 for that 90 head, and it was $19.80 a head to cover that. And so, same thing down here on the heifer, 4.5 weight, it cost $17.05 a head for that heifer. Oops. And then down here, we had heavier heifers. They were 6.5 weight heifers. $22 per head is what that cost them to cover. So when we look at the ending value form and how this was produced, let's take that first set of steers, the light steers that we had, 475 pound weight, coverage price. Their expected ending value was their insured value was for $77,000. The rate, the total premium subsidy, here's how it ended up. Their coverage price was $182. Their actual ending price was $170 from the CME Cattle Feeder Index, 48, and that they came to an indemnity of $11.83 per head coming back to them. Now they have to pay their premium out of that, so you've got to take the premium out. The $5,000 minus the $1,700 in premium, that ended up to $32.75 or $36.38 per head that they received back. Nice little chunk of change. Same thing here. Our actual ending value, this was on the heifers. The actual ending value coverage price was $165. The actual ending value was $154, $10.76 per hundredweight that was in there for a total indemnity of $4,358. But nothing in life is free, so we take our premium out, $28.32 over this whole bunch of cattle, this 90 head, $31.36 a head. Same thing here. This is with the heavier heifers, 6.5 weights. They were $149. The actual ending value was $139. It was $9.68 per hundredweight, $6,292 on the indemnity. Take our premium out, $4,076, $40.76 a head. So as you kind of look at that, the total weight, they had $10,000 and $17 coming back to them in cash. So $36.33 a head across the whole 280 head is what they were able to garner back. That was a big win. Not all wins are like this, but that was a nice example of one. So we look at when did they decide to strike. So if you look at this deal, this was on October 22 cattle feeder and how it all went out. This is that CME Feeder Cattle Index price, right? We're looking at how this affects it. So they chose to jump in here, and guess what? We did not pick that at the high. Stinking thing jumped up there, but none of us are perfect, and we can't know when the high is going to be. But this is all the more that had to drop from 164 to 162 is where the futures price was at 166, right? But the cash price was at 162. And we jumped in here and put this across. So you look at where they struck at right here, and it would have been up here higher. And we brought this down to the 162. We can kind of go back there, and they struck at 149, 139. The steers are going to be a little bit better example. They get a 10% increase in that price because they are light steers and the value. And they jumped in here, locked in at 182, dropped down to 170. And that's how it worked. So you notice I didn't bring in Lewistown Livestock. I didn't bring in Pays. I didn't bring in Mile Cities. So their price isn't here. It's a CME Cattle Feeder Index that we established the value from. So LRP tool, let's just redo it. The problems of market volatility, really it's the stories that we're telling ourselves, and no sense of control in our destiny. That is a really key thing. The stress that it puts on your body and mind, the relationship with your family, whether you're the son taking over or you're the dad that's got the rest of the family you're taking care of, those deals, we can affect that problem. The lender confidence, we can bring them confidence in what they're doing. The no marketing available, you're going to have an opportunity to choose which video sale you want to go into, because now you know what the floor is on your cattle, and so you can jump into that. And then hedging, no major margin cash outlays. We're able to do this simple subsidized tool that can jump you in there and do that. So here's ways that you can get a hold of me, like rangeandlivestockinsurance.com or Tater at rangeandlivestockinsurance.com. My The other email is Tater@Erickson925 Insurance, or obviously you can call me at 406-366-1287. So that's basically what I have to talk about. Would love to visit with you in person. Share this video, rewatch it, watch all the different things that come into being a part of that, and we will help you be able to manage your downside risk. Thank you again, and please get a hold of us if you would like to know more about this cool tool.